Alrighty, a good Tuesday afternoon. Welcome to week 3 of the Bold Bald Breakdown right here on the Big Play Sports Network. I am Mike Chico Borman. He is Nick Shook with NFL.com and NFL Network, and we are celebrating one hell of a week 3 statement win by your Cleveland Browns over the Tennessee Titans by a score of 27-3. Nick, I was thinking about this yesterday and talked about it on the show, and I guess we're used to this as Browns fans, but the roller coaster ride, and you know, year after year we talk about the roller coaster ride, but the roller coaster ride specifically, I mean, you walked in last week and you pretty much had to carry me into the studio because I was kind of, a little down and out. Nick Chubb goes down and the Browns lose, and that was coming off Cincinnati where it was straight euphoria. And then 2 days ago, the Browns absolutely dominated like I haven't seen a defense dominate in a long, long time. And here they sit, 2-1 with a first place collision about to take place with the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, it has been a roller coaster ride through 3 weeks.
Yeah, tumultuous would be an understatement with this team, which if you're a Browns fan, you come to expect that. I grew up going to games and thinking, oh, they got a lead. And there was 4 stages of being a Browns fan, which is, wow, they're playing well. They're competing with this team they're not supposed to compete with. Wow, they have a lead. Wow, they're going to win this game. I can't wait to start bragging to my friends at school, and then slowly but surely you watch it crumble and fall apart. That is not this team anymore. There was a point in the game where they were up, I think, 10-0 or 10-3, and I thought, they probably need more. That's probably not going to be enough. Well, that was enough. That was enough points to win right there by halftime because your defense is that good. This is a defense you have not seen in Cleveland in such a long time that you don't know how to adjust your expectations. For example, I picked the Browns to win that game 23-21. And looking back, I can't believe I ever thought that the Titans would put 21 points on the board against this defense. Of course, hindsight is 20/20, but when you have a defense that good, you can feel really great even after you lose your star running back. And what a shift from week 2 to week 3. At this time last week, it was partly cloudy over the lake, but it felt like nothing but a black cloud hanging over the city. The entire region, all of Brownstown, worldwide, the Browns backers all around the world. This time around, it's sunny skies, baby. Everything's looking up.
Okay, so let's go back a bit. You said there in hindsight, picking 23-21, you had no idea how would Tennessee score 21 points. I don't think any of us envisioned, myself included, the Tennessee Titans. It's one thing to not let Derrick Henry go nuts, which he's done against us and he's done against plenty of teams, right? But they shut him down. I mean, they absolutely shut him down. He was a non-factor. The run game was a non-factor. And so you knew going in, if you could put them in advantageous pass rush situations where 2nd and long, 3rd and long, whatever, Ryan Tannehill was going to be in trouble. 3 undrafted free agents on that line. Obviously a defensive line and pass rushers that are second to none, including Myles Garrett. But it was like Derrick Henry was just invisible.
Yeah, it was
for 3 hours.
It was painful for anybody who had him on their fantasy team, which is myself included. But otherwise,
0. He got you 0.
Well, I think it was 2. I don't know how he got 2 points, but I had 2 from him. I can't explain the league rules, but the Browns found tremendous success. And what's funny is even after the defensive coordinator change, they actually were really good against him last year. His lowest per carry average came in a game against the Browns last year. So for whatever it is, for whatever reason, the Browns have Derrick Henry's number, but it was vitally important to the defensive approach. And I guess we should have looked back to week 1 because they found the going similarly tough against the New Orleans Saints, who also have a solid defense. That could have given us a preview of what we were going to see last weekend. Both of the strategies were the same, though. Put the ball in Ryan Tannehill's hands, don't give him a ton of time to throw, and dare him to make a difference, which he couldn't, because if you look at his stable of receivers, it's just DeAndre Hopkins, who, still very solid, made a few nice catches in this game. And then you have Treylon Burks, who's a second-year player who still hasn't really gotten his feet underneath him in the NFL. And Nick Westbrook-Akine. Like, that's it. Their tight ends, non-factors. Like, this is the reason that I went into the season, I looked at the Titans and thought, man, they're not going to be very good. Mike Vrabel will coach them to their peak, but talent-wise, they were lacking. And it showed on Sunday. And that's not to take anything away from the Browns' defense, because the Browns' defense did a tremendous job, which started, like you said, with stopping Derrick Henry. But looking back, we probably should have seen some of this coming, because what it really tells me more than anything is that the Chargers have a problem, because they allowed Ryan Tannehill to put a number of points on them and win in overtime. The Browns, being a high-quality defense, dare I say elite, did not let them do that.
I said elite yesterday on the show, and I'm standing by. Hey, you know what? It can change week to week. As we said, our emotions, my demeanor, I won't speak for you, my demeanor, the attitude, everything last week, it was just it was depressing. So much like our emotions, week to week, we can grade. And this is an elite defense through 3 weeks. And okay, forget about, because you watch a lot of film. You're watching not just Browns film, you're watching film across the league.
Every game.
That is what you do. So forget about the numbers, which clearly say they're number one in the league right now through 3 weeks. What do your eyeballs tell you? Because you're seeing defenses across the league. Is it matching up? Are the numbers matching up when you watch film that the Browns are the best defense in the league right now?
First main takeaway is very simple, that everybody can see on their televisions at home when they're watching. You can see in the stands if you're at the game. The defensive front gets a significant push. It's all about surge. Who's winning the battle of the trenches? You can see it right after the ball is snapped. Who's getting push? They are getting a significant push, no matter what offensive line they've played. I wonder, for a second, I wonder if maybe they've just played 3 average to below average offensive lines, and maybe that does bear out. But right now, no matter who they're playing, it all looks the same on Sunday, which is the interior, the edge rushers. They're all winning at the point of attack, which speeds up an opposing offense, makes the quarterback uncomfortable, and oftentimes shuts down the run game. Through 3 games, we've basically seen that with every opponent. And I think about back to week 1 when I saw the Jets playing the Bills, and I was like, man, that is an elite defense. That's a championship caliber defense. I'm thinking about it now and comparing it to the Browns. The Browns are better in that category, and it all starts up front. And it really frees up that linebacking core that I've been so concerned about them not addressing over the last few years in the offseason. They're playing like with their hair on fire, because it's a lot easier for them when your front 4 is making that much of a difference, that you're not dealing with clean blockers getting to second level. It's so much easier for you to make plays. And then, of course, the secondary, when the pass rush gets there, when there's less time for the quarterback to operate, it's less time for them to have to cover. So everyone's benefiting, but it all starts up front. And through 3 games, I see no reason why, other than maybe the fact that they might run into a really good offensive line. I can't wait for that San Francisco game. I think that'll be a really good test of that front.
Yep.
But through 3 games, I don't see a reason why I should doubt them, because no matter who they're playing, they are getting consistent victory up front, which is powering them.
So we have a segment every week on the Bold Ball Breakdown with myself and Nick Shook here on the Big Play Sports Network. It's called Numbers That Matter. We're going to get to it. Not right now. Well, we kind of will right now, because I feel like I said to you pre-show, I feel like we could do a half hour to 45 minutes on just numbers alone from this defense. But like through 3 games, to your point, and talking about their dominance, 18 points allowed, 1 touchdown if you wipe out the kneel downs, 1 touchdown in 34 offensive series. 21 first downs. Now, entering week 3, not after, entering last week, the next best number was 26. I mean, these are all numbers that are just, like we say, I mean, it's dominance at every level. Let me pose this a different way. We know that Andrew Berry, we talked a lot about Andrew Berry getting to work in the offseason and bolstering the interior of that defensive line, making some changes on the back end, and also bringing in Jim Schwartz. Now, I know the easy answer to this question is going to be, well, it's a combination of the two, and it is. If you had to lean one way or the other, is it more about the additions, players and personnel in that respect, or is this more about an attitude and a scheme that Jim Schwartz has brought into Cleveland?
Man, this is tough to pick one over the other because what I see on Sundays is the impact of the guys they added. I see the Maurice Hurst, the Shelby Harrises, the Zadarius Smith, the Obo Okoronkwo. All those guys are making a difference. But I also think the attitude matters. Of course, the way they're used too, but like the focus on celebrating after successful plays. These guys dance all the time. I mean, every third play, they're celebrating, whether it's a group or individually. Like to the point where I'm like, yo, tone it down. And then I think, well, they are playing really well, and that's what he wants them to do. So that gets you going, man. That gets the juices flowing. It makes football fun, and this defense is having fun. So if the analyst in me says the personnel additions, they would not be this good without that group, right? But the attitude is such a change from last year where under Joe Woods, they were blowing coverages and pointing at each other and arguing and not knowing what's going on. And now they know what to do. It's working, and they're having a blast, and that's infectious. It's contagious. It'll spread around a defense to where you're playing well. All right, let's like sack hunting, right, for quarterback, or I mean for defensive ends going after quarterbacks, right? Oh, you're going to get one. Well, I want to get one. Well, who's getting the next one? Well, who's getting the next turnover? Who's getting the next play? Whether it's the front four, the linebackers, the secondary, they're all finding success. The funniest thing about it was Greg Newsome didn't play on Sunday, and he didn't even know he wasn't out there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how good they are as a group. So if I had to pick between the two, I'm leaning. They have embodied their defensive coordinator's personality. That guy loves to win. He loves to let you know that we're going to come in there and kick your butt. And that's who they are right now, and it's really fun to watch.
I've been watching football for a long time. We know how old I am. You've been watching and playing football for a long time yourself. We watch sports in general because, you know, we love it. We love the competition, and we also, hey, you never know when you're going to see something you haven't seen before. Have you ever seen a formation where not one but two tight ends are coming in motion because basically Myles Garrett is coming in motion on the defensive side of the ball? And it was just kind of like, okay, we got to call a timeout. We don't know how to deal with this guy.
Usually it's the reverse. It's an offense flips the formation, the
That's what I'm
defense
saying.
follows.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen an offense follow one specific edge rusher. I mean, that's really the funniest part about it. That was like
with two guys.
That was my favorite. Yeah, that was my favorite sequence of the entire game. That just really illustrated how that dominant they were up front. Is not only did they dedicate two guys to him and followed him to the point where they ran out of play clock and had to call a timeout, but then coming out of that timeout, they dedicate 7 pass blockers to a 4-man rush, and Myles Garrett gets a sack, racing around former second-round pick Andre Dillard, who once lost his job to a former rugby player turned left tackle in Jordan Mailata in Philadelphia before going to Tennessee. So, like I said, not the best matchups offensive line-wise, and maybe we'll see them truly tested in the weeks ahead. Again, if he faces Trent Williams in San Francisco, that's going to be a tough one for sure. But the fact that they were able to win at such a personnel mismatch, 7 versus 4, and Myles Garrett's that good, that just really punctuated the entire day for this defense and how good they're playing right now.
And I think, you know, just to put an exclamation point on it as far as Myles Garrett, Kevin Stefanski said it after the game, you know, it's not like every team is not going into a game against the Browns when they're preparing for that defense going, okay, 95 is a nightmare. We've got to contain him. We've got to slow him down. And he's like every single team says we can't let him take over the game. And yet every single week, if not every single series, he's wrecking game plans. And it's just, you know he's coming. Now, again, it helps when you've got those other guys. Make no mistake. But ultimately, every team is geared towards 95. He's circled everywhere in meeting rooms across the league, yet nobody can slow him down.
Yeah, and I think, with Myles Garrett in his career to this point, I mean, it's been 4 years since he's been talking about my goal is to win Defensive Player of the Year, and he hasn't done it yet. And really what he's been missing in order to win that award is the sack total. I mean, 16 and a half last year, but, he's never gotten to that point where you're like, oh, he's flirting with the record. He's going to be on the national radar. And a lot of that has to do with the Browns' success or lack thereof as a team. But this is also why personnel matters, because as a defense, you're only as good as your weakest link, of course, right? if Myles Garrett's going to attract that much attention, you have to have somebody else that can actually get the job done. And that's what they did this offseason by going and getting Zadarius Smith, by going and adding depth along the interior in Shelby Harris and a number, Maurice Hurst, who's playing lights out, by the way. Please watch him. Like, focus on him if you rewatch the game. Watch Maurice Hurst. He's playing his best football of his career. That matters because if you take the attention and direct it toward Myles Garrett, whether he's effective or not, if you got 2 or 3 guys blocking him, you're going to free up other guys. It's on them to get the job done. That's what makes a good defense, and that's the difference between this year and previous years. You basically swapped out Jadeveon Clowney, who either wasn't available or, effort issues, whatever it might be, disinterest last year, can't blame him, and you replaced him with a guy who knows how to get the job done and looks like he's enjoying being here. I love watching those entrance videos that the Browns post sometimes because Zadarius Smith always looks like he's so excited to play. Like, he's just like, man, I'm out of Minnesota and I'm in Cleveland where our defense is really good and it's fun to play for them.
And they love, in hearing comments from Zadarius and Obo and Owusu Koromoa talking about
He's also playing with his hair on fire, by the way. He's having a great year.
Hearing those guys talk about Myles Garrett, to your point about these guys are having so much fun, like every single one of them is just like, he's so much fun to play with. We're having so much fun as a team. Like, he's such a great teammate. We joke around, we have fun. Now, again, I know, hey, when you're putting in performances like this, how can you not have fun?
Yeah.
But I guess the point to all of this is you look back a year ago, and, of course, you weren't playing well, but the bickering and the finger pointing, these guys – there's something to be said, even though it's kind of one of those roll your eyes and it's coach speak, but when you're playing for the guy next to you, and it feels like this group really is playing for the guy next to them, and it's not just like Myles is happy. Remember week 1 when I think it was Zadarius that hit Burrow on the first snap of the game, and he's like, I got there. I knew I got there in a hurry, and I'm like, who Zadarius, and he's kind of smiling. They're playing for each other, and I that hasn't been the case in Cleveland for a long time on the defensive side of the ball. For me, since the mid '80s, that's the last time I've seen a defense like this dominant. I know only 3 weeks, but everything: pass rush, back end, coordinator, scheme, pressure, attack, everything. It reminds me of the mid '80s. For those that do remember, it's just. It's awesome.
I don't remember because that predates me, but I've seen the highlights. I understand the story behind it. The Michael Dean Perrys of the world, the Clay Matthews, the Hanford Dixons. Yes,
not one, not two, 3 patties on the MVP.
The MVP.
MVP was
today.
3 patties.
Why did they take away local promo? By the way, like why can't we get a Shelby Harris triple decker or a Myles Garrett 24-piece chicken nugget? It's because people don't eat fast food like that anymore. We all know that. The downsides of eating your fast food. But what's been fast food for the Browns? Opposing offenses.
Yeah.
That's how you tie it all together.
Look at that. Look at that transition. Pro's pro right here, kids. It's week 3 of the Bold Bald Breakdown. Cleveland Browns 2-1 following a 27-3 drubbing of the Tennessee Titans coming up this Sunday at 1 o'clock, Cleveland Browns Stadium. Browns hosting the also 2-1 Baltimore Ravens, who had an interesting, if not very confounding, way to lose that game to the Indianapolis Colts. We will preview the Browns and Ravens coming up here in just a bit. Let's flip it to the offense because, it was we've talked about the defense now for 3 weeks. They've been dominant. For the offense, it's been hit or miss. Of course, last week we're mourning the loss of Nick Chubb, and it was just one of those games. But we also, and you went in great detail, as you always do, and talking about Deshaun Watson and the question, hey, it's going to keep coming every single week. Is he back? Is he closer to being, 2020 form? Will he ever get there? Well, he was 27 for 33, 289 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. I think the word that I would use, Nick, to describe his performance, just watching his performance, was he looked a lot more in control. He looked a lot more confident. The numbers seem to bear that out. Again, let's go to the eyeball test. What did you see that you liked out of Deshaun Watson in this offense?
I think the comfort progressed as the game went on. It helps when you know your defense is stopping them from doing anything because it wasn't there early. It looked kind of a lot like it did in week 2. The Boo Birds came out for a little bit there at the stadium early in the game because they just couldn't really string it together. Now, when you go back and watch this game, your eyes are going to say, how did he only have 6 incompletions? Well, because a lot of the time he was able to improvise and find guys underneath. He drove the ball down the field a few times. He had a couple of nice long completions to Amari Cooper. Elijah Moore got very involved in the offense. It looked good. I still have issues with play calling. I thought there was way too much creativity, if you want to spin it positively.
The reverse flea flicker.
Yeah, there's like 2 or 3 reverses and just all kinds of trickery early on that I didn't think was necessary, but it is kind of a Kevin Stefanski hallmark in certain situations like this. I mean, Tennessee's defense is good. That's probably the point that I should make more than anything is that especially their defensive front. Their secondary has some questions. Amani Hooker fell asleep on Amari Cooper's touchdown pass, but that's neither here nor there at this point. But their defensive front's good. Jeffrey Simmons is an all-pro. He is going to be an elite, rusher for a long time at his 3-technique position. He got paid accordingly because he's very good. And the Browns still found success. Now, it wasn't on the ground. We knew that was going to be a problem because you don't have Nick Chubb. I like how they threw all the bodies at it, whether it was Kareem Hunt or Jerome Ford or Pierre Strong. They just said, everybody's getting carries.
Harrison Bryant.
Yeah, we're going to show you from that play calling. A lot of Browns fans would have been upset with that if it didn't go well, but it worked out. So, just keep hanging on the edge of the cliff there. I think that, you should be encouraged by the fact that they were able to string together some offense in the second half, put together some good drives. But visually, I still am not necessarily satisfied by Deshaun Watson's game. It was encouraging. I felt like he took a step forward. Like he will rise in my quarterback rankings this week because he was not so dreadful as he was the week prior. But the bar is low. I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon that says he's back and they're going to go win the Super Bowl just yet. I need to see it put together over the next month, and especially against a defense, again, like San Francisco and like Baltimore's this week. I mean, it's going to be 2 tough tests. You have a bye week in between, and then you kind of get down to a stretch where which is kind of funny. We talked about the pall over the city last week. I'm getting texts on Sunday night and Monday morning. The Browns could be favored in every one but one of their last games. Folks, we got 14 more games. They're going to be the favorite for the last 14 games of the season. If the defense keeps playing this way, they'll have a shot in every game. Defenses win championships. Even if folks will tell you that it's a passing league and you need to score 1 million points, just look how Ohio State played against Notre Dame on Saturday. But my point is this. The offense still has to be better than it was because they're going to face stiffer competition. It was encouraging, though. And
as you said, that begins, obviously, this week against Baltimore at Cleveland Browns Stadium. Let's talk about that rushing attack. Now, obviously, they were missing Nick Chubb for a significant portion of last week's loss to Pittsburgh, but this was, okay, all week you're preparing. You don't have Nick Chubb. You won't have him for the season. We did get some good news. We think that it's only an MCL. But he is, done for the foreseeable future for this season.
Yeah, let's not do the whole Aaron Rodgers I might come back in January thing.
Yeah, I don't think Nick likes magic mushrooms or
whatever.
Sitting in the dark for 8 days straight. I don't even
know what the term was used to describe the Achilles thing. Yeah. I mean, if it works out, good for you. But
right.
Browns fans don't hope for that. He's done.
Yeah, Nick Chubb is so, and I don't mean this. Well, yeah, I guess I do. Like Aaron Rodgers is a great. I love watching him play quarterback. One of the best that I've ever seen play the quarterback position. But man, that guy loves attention.
Oh yeah,
he is a diva. Yeah. And that's so not Nick Chubb. So no, we don't have to worry about that. But as it relates to the running game in this game and moving forward, they had 31 carries, 78 yards. Average per carry about 2.5. I mean, like you said, they didn't really establish the run. Pierre Strong, Jerome Ford, Kareem Hunt, Harrison Bryant,
Marquise Goodwin, Elijah Moore.
Yeah, I mean, they were all getting. What did you see that looked different in terms of the approach, or maybe it was, hey, we're not gonna change drastically without Nick Chubb. We're going to run a lot of the same stuff. What did it look like coming out of that backfield?
I thought I saw a lot of early perimeter attacks to try to soften up the defensive front, which they knew was going to be a tough, front to run against, especially without Nick Chubb. It would have been tough with Nick Chubb. Chubb could have had a 74-yard game on 20 carries, and that's basically what would have happened against that front. But they tried to soften him up by getting outside, the jet sweeps, the handoffs to Elijah Moore, the double reverse, flea flicker, whatever you want to call it, to just change it up and kind of keep him honest up there. It didn't really work, but it didn't really matter to me. In fact, I looked at Jerome Ford's stat line after the game, and I was like, that's all he had? Like, I felt like he ran better than that. Like, the eye test did not match up with the numbers for a lot of this game offensively. But you don't change who you are, and I don't think that's what they're going to do. There wasn't any, notable discrepancy in direction of run or style of run, and probably a part of that is because they ran with so many different backs. I would like to see them run Pierre Strong less in power sets because he is a speed back than they have in the last couple games, but that's also against Pittsburgh. It was a personnel issue where he was literally the only guy you had left. So it's a group that I think has a lot of room to grow, but I don't think you're going to face a front that's strong on every week. Now, we could see that come to fruition this week. What is Baltimore's front right now? What is their defense? They allowed Zach Moss to get a little busy against them last week. I have not necessarily been super encouraged.
A little busy last week.
Get a little busy.
I like that.
Get the feet, picking them up, putting them down. Little dance moves, all that stuff. And I think that the Browns could have a few guys who could do that. I need to see more from Kareem Hunt. Obviously, he was only on the team for less than a week when he played. Maybe he's a guy who ends up breaking out. But right now, I still don't feel great about the offense. They're 10th in overall yards, and we know that it's been very up and down. But I don't think you change who you are. It's too early. You have a good offensive line. You have a right tackle who's a rookie who's playing pretty darn good. I'm not worried about how athletic are they left to right. Can they still run the zone? They have a really good offensive line coach in Bill Callahan, who, if he doesn't have them prepared to execute that offense, that's on the staff more than on the personnel. So trust who you are. Continue to do what you do. Keep getting Deshaun Watson comfortable, because if he's comfortable, it's going to open everything up for you. If he's really effective and speeds up his clock, which is still a little slow on Sunday, at least for the first half, then you're going to be way better and you're going to be able to run the ball. It's not going to matter on how you do it.
So are you basically saying that you're not concerned as far as the offensive line goes? I mean, Jack Conklin's out for the year. DeJuan Jones has been, very, very good. This guy could end up being quite the steal years down the road, but he's played very, very well to start his career. He's not so great in the run game. Jed Wills is okay. That doesn't concern you a whole lot in terms of and I guess the question would be, if it does, what can you do, or is there really nothing you can't? This is what you are. It's who you are. It's what your offense is built around. So you've got different personnel, obviously, and 24 ain't walking through that door, but you're kind of stuck in a sense. That's what you're going to run.
Yeah, I don't think that there's a magic elixir that's going to fix everything for them. That was 24, and he's gone. So I think that what you have to do now is just manage the situation as best as possible. Hope that DeJuan improves as a run blocker right tackle. I see that PFF has it graded disastrously bad in the run game. But again, rookie getting his feet wet, big, kind of a lumbering guy. You're really worried more about him being effective as a pass setter than as a run blocker, because he's still going to be so big that eventually he'll figure it out as he gets more reps. This is a guy who's still very green to the NFL game, and they didn't really run in a similar fashion at Ohio State, where you're facing lesser competition. So he'll figure that out, I think, eventually. And honestly, you know how I feel about Jed Wills, which is that this is probably the last year you're going to see of him. Once that fifth-year option's out, so long. But this is who you have. I think it matters more about your scheme and about opening up Deshaun Watson's abilities, which will keep a defense more honest than worrying about the fact that you can't gain more than – I mean, eventually it will be an issue if you can't gain more than 3 yards per carry on the ground, but right now it's not a huge one.
One thing that I think we're seeing more of, and obviously we saw it a little bit, 2 catches, 33 yards, had a touchdown, is Jerome Ford. And I didn't realize until recently he was a wide receiver in high school. Obviously started at UC in the backfield, and he is a great running back. But it feels like he could be a guy used a lot in that passing game and coming out of the backfield and be a weapon. And we saw it right away, obviously, even in that Pittsburgh game. So I think Jerome Ford can be utilized there. I also wonder – and I had somebody bring this to my attention, so I'm definitely going to ask you about it. Elijah Moore has been compared to, well, he'll be the poor man's Deebo Samuel, and he'll line up.
This is why I hate training camp storylines, but anyway.
Right. So with Elijah Moore, are we better off, do you think, or is he better off just lining up on the line of scrimmage. I mean, concentrating on being, a slot receiver or wide out or wherever, and just not so much having to bounce him all around the formation. Like, would that do him more good? Because I think a lot of people are saying, man, where's this production we were all waiting for?
No. And I know this is, I talk about hating training camp storylines. I also hate fantasy football's impact on how skilled players specifically are perceived as players.
It's fair. You're right.
Oh, he's not giving me 2 touchdowns and 150 yards. I drafted him in the 7th round. I thought I got a steal. What's going on? He's having a terrible year. No, he's playing his role in the offense. Now, he hasn't gotten really going yet. But I think his best, traits are to use him in a number of different roles. This guy has been in the NFL for a few years. He was a dynamite receiver at Ole Miss. This is a guy who knows how to play receiver. Why not move him around and make defenses account for where is number 8? Where is he? Is he over there? He's over there? He's over there? Oh, okay. He's in the backfield now. We need a linebacker on him. Suddenly we got a mismatch. Maybe he hits a little wheel route out of the backfield, something like that, and you get a big play. I just think we haven't seen it happen yet. We've only gotten 3 games.
Yeah.
He wasn't really, a factor until the second half of week 2. Like, you're just getting started. Temper your expectations, folks. Let's stop thinking about it from a fantasy football perspective. You're not playing Madden trying to run his stats up and get him to a 99. You're operating this offense with him as a part of it, but not necessarily the featured part of it. I think it'll be best, maybe a little bit less of the jet sweeps, but I think eventually one of those are going to pop against a lesser defense. But let him be a number of different things. He's an athletic guy. He has got the talent and ability that the average player. Cedric Tillman's not going to line up in the backfield. He's a bigger receiver, but he's not going to. So why not use your athletic guys? Create some mismatches. Mix it up. Add some variety.
Speaking of a guy that I would think presents a lot of mismatches, David Njoku. What's going on with that? Is that Njoku? Is it they're not looking his way? They're not scheming enough up for him? Like what? Because it feels like there's a guy that was there were 2 storylines coming out of camp, big storylines. One was nobody can block Myles Garrett. Go figure. The other was on the offensive side of the ball, along with Elijah Moore, was, wow, David Njoku, I mean, nobody can really cover him either. And again, I know it's training camp and all that sort of thing, but this guy is pretty damn athletic. He is a guy that I would think would present plenty of matchup issues for opposing teams. Is it just, hey, it's only 3 games, relax, or do they need to get him more involved?
This is what I'm saying about the offense in its entirety. I feel like they have not gotten comfortable.
Sure.
It starts with your quarterback. But I feel like this is an offense that you're not going to see really hit its stride until after the bye week, somewhere around the midpoint of the season, where maybe they open it up a little bit. Partially because they had to, weather the loss of their running back and now have to kind of retool. They don't shift their identity, but they have to figure out different ways to move the football on the ground and continue to move the chains and try to win the time of possession battle, which is going to be important. And you're probably going to do that because you have a really good defense, but you need to produce from those 3 and outs that defense defense provides your offense more opportunities to score. But it is, again, I think kind of the fantasy football perspective where it's like they've tried to kind of get him involved. They did last week with a couple of tight end screens. One went for a big gain. One was a disaster. Like, they're still working out the kinks. And
he's a good blocker, too, in the run game. I don't think he gets enough.
Yeah, to a degree, yeah. I loved his combine workout way back in the day. I don't think he gets enough credit for that, too. But, this is a team that love to use their tight ends with Baker Mayfield, and they have not really used the tight ends in the same way since they've added Deshaun Watson into their lineup. I don't know if it's a bit of a philosophy change, more shotgun snaps, that type of thing. Like, they added Jordan Akins in the offseason. I was like, oh, that guy could end up being a big player. He hasn't really done much of anything. I think he's got a couple catches. Harrison Bryant has kind of disappointed to this point. So you're going to see, defenses focus on Njoku's clearly their best tight end. We got to take him away, or we got to worry about him. That's how Bryant gets open. That's how other guys get open. That's why they see more targets. The problem I have, and this is across the league, is the unfair focus of why is this guy not getting the ball enough? Why is DJ Moore not getting enough targets in Chicago in week 1? Well, sometimes they're just not open. Sometimes that's the guy that defenses want to take away. Sometimes the progression just doesn't lead you there at the right time. There's a number of different factors here. So Worrying about David Njoku's lack of involvement, I think, is not a big concern because when he does get the ball, 4 catches on 4 targets last week. Granted, it was only for 20 yards, but he's doing his job. He's not dropping the ball. He's not fumbling it like he did in week 2. I would be very happy that he's still in the offense. He's still a weapon, and eventually he'll step up when it's his moment to shine, like he did against Tampa last year when they won that game in overtime, or in the last second, But let's not worry too much about the stats right now.
Okay, so now let's get to this Sunday. We got our numbers that matter coming up in just a bit. But this Sunday, you can't ask for much more. You got a home game against the Baltimore Ravens at Cleveland Browns Stadium, 1 o'clock kickoff, first place on the line. The Ravens limping into this one a little bit, falling to the Indianapolis Colts 22-19. Not many people, myself included, saw that one happening. It ended up being Matt Gay out Justin Tucker, if that's possible.
Oh, you should have heard Jay Feely on the call. Oh, guy couldn't be more excited by one kicker's performance.
Did he have 4 over? He is the highest paid kicker in the game, right?
No, Matt Gay? I'm not sure.
Because I know he got his contract. Well, maybe Tucker's getting more.
I think Tucker's still making more.
Yeah, but Matt Gay signed like a 4-year contract.
Buccaneers let that guy walk. Think about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's still Tucker.
So
Gay right behind him now.
It was a 4-year deal, I think, 20-something.
$5.625 million per year, according to OverTheCap.com.
Well, he earned every penny of that in that 22-19 win over the Ravens. This is a Ravens team still trying to find that offense under Todd Monken. I'll tell you one thing that I've seen, and it was again evident against the Colts, even in the loss. Lamar Jackson is running the football. He's dangerous running the football. Saw him against Cincinnati. He does things, and this is where, man, we talk about this all the time in football, that, you've got everything covered, and your defense, you perfect play call, perfect blitz call, perfect whatever, perfect coverage. But at the end of the play, at the end of the day, and end of the play, if that quarterback is going to be able to slip away, if that quarterback is going to be able to get out of the backfield and all of a sudden move the chains, it's demoralizing. Lamar Jackson might be the best in the game still at doing just that.
Oh, without a doubt.
And so going into this game against Baltimore, we're talking about a dominant defense through 3 games. Now, how does their strategy, how does the philosophy, what is the philosophy going against the Ravens on Sunday?
Well, I think the Ravens have been an interesting case study in actively trying to change who you are while using mostly the same players with the same skills that once worked in a different system. Because the Greg Roman separation had an air of like, well, we're going to scapegoat him because we've reached our peak with his system and we know that it can't win us a Super Bowl. So he's the guy out and, he's not going to get a job anywhere else in football this year because he was all to blame. It's like, well, this is also an MVP quarterback in a Greg Roman offense in the past. But they ran the first. They were an option offense. They did not throw the ball that much. The Ravens now look, for those of you who have not watched that hated team down in Baltimore's games to this point, can't blame you, I understand. You're still upset about the move. I get it. They are a different-looking offense now. They are not your read option pistol set type of team. They don't have J.K. Dobbins. Gus Edwards is the lead back. They can still run the ball. Lamar Jackson's still spectacular. The passing game has largely been underneath. Zay Flowers, number 4, guy you want to pay attention to. He's going to be the biggest problem in the passing game. Mark Andrews has actually not been able to produce that much. He was not healthy for week 1, so he's played 2 games, hasn't played a massive role. Odell made a bit of a cameo before he exited with an injury in week 2. So
that was surprising. I was kind of surprised to see him go down with. Anyway,
little bit.
That wasn't very nice of me. Come on, be classy, Chico.
He was productive to a degree until he was no longer available. Nelson Aguilar, remember that famous video? Yeah. Well, we were just catching babies. They were being thrown out the windows. That fire in Philadelphia. I caught it. Unlike Aguilar, well, he's catching footballs in Baltimore now. He's actually played a surprisingly important role for them in the last game and a half, really, ever since Odell went out. So what you're going to see in this offense is a team that can, in fact, throw the ball. Every Browns fan on earth wants to say Lamar Jackson can't pass. He can pass. Down the field, he's less than perfect. He has missed some throws, but he's also dropped a few beauties in there. This team is not going to be one that you say, all you got to do is contain Lamar on the ground. All you got to do is keep him from getting outside when he runs the ball. The stats will tell you, and especially from Sunday, that that's exactly what they did, but that is not what they did. That was more of Lamar improvising than anything in a very strange game. It was a soggy M&T Bank Stadium where they replaced the turf field with grass a few years ago and paid the price for it on Sunday. And more than anything, it's going to be a traditional approach. The only thing you really have to worry about is that edge rushing group that has been able to feast on two less than mobile quarterbacks and one who's young and still a little overwhelmed in Kenny Pickett. They're going to have to be more disciplined. I think back to when I worked for the Browns and they were talking about Lamar at that time. And the thing I kept hearing from all the defensive linemen way back then, we got to cage him. We got to keep him in a box. Can't rush upfield. Can't give him exit lanes.
Do you shadow him? Do you have somebody shadow
like a spy?
him?
Yeah.
Spy him.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably JOK is your Lamar stopper. Right. But what really you need to do more than anything is stay disciplined on the edge. I think that they have the group that can cage him. A better group than they had even a few years ago when they caused him problems. So it's about that. And if you can do that, I'm not too worried about how they'll be able to affect you. It will be probably their best test as a defense to this point. Lamar is a fantastic improvisational master. Ooh. That is how they won. But they didn't win the game, but that's how they were in that game. Both of their touchdowns scored were Lamar rushing touchdowns, and they were both Lamar getting out, avoiding the rush, picking his spots, and getting in the end zone.
He had just not to interrupt you, 14 carries, 101 yards.
Yeah.
And 2 touchdowns in that game.
And both of his touchdown runs looked quite similar, which was him dropping back in the pocket, escaping, and finding some space, breaking a tackle, and getting in. The second one was actually more impressive. It was he rolled out and basically did a little bit of a hesitation, all right, set up the block. Okay, oh, now I'm going to sprint through here. He's dynamite. He's electric. There's a reason he's paid a lot of money.
Would that be a shimmy shake?
Yeah, shimmy, yeah.
Shimmy,
yeah. So I think that the Browns are going to have their hands full, but I do also believe that they're equipped to face this guy and be able to shut him down.
Okay, now we flip it. The Baltimore Ravens defense, when the Browns have the ball. First of all, Marlon Humphrey went down early in camp, and that was an injury. I remember talking to you about it. It was a secondary that was very thin to begin with, but Marlon Humphrey is one of the best in the game still. But he went down, and they were saying possibly the first 4 games. This is game number 4 on the schedule. Are we hearing anything about Marlon Humphrey? I'm putting you on the spot here because I haven't heard anything. To my knowledge, he's still out. But a guy like Marlon Humphrey returning for this game would be a significant addition for that Baltimore defense.
So it's Tuesday in the week. Usually John Harbaugh is not a guy who likes to give you a lot of updates unless he's really, really certain that somebody's going to play. He's pretty straightforward when that is the case. From what I've seen, he has not been that on this topic so far. I think if we learn about his status, it's going to be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Friday is when the official injury report comes out. Before then, you have to monitor the team's practice reports, which can or cannot be 100% accurate. We know teams like to keep information to themselves when it benefits them competitively. So, interesting. It will be an interesting thing to watch. Man, the Ravens have been decimated in the secondary over the last few years by injuries. In fact, it got to the point, and I was just talking to my buddy about this last night. I'm watching that game back yesterday afternoon, and it's third quarter, and somebody makes a play in the Ravens secondary, and I hear the broadcaster go, "Oh, what a play by Ronald Darby!" And I was like, "Ronald Darby's still in the league?" I feel like he was with the Rams ages ago.
They've had to go deep into that.
Yeah, and that's where they are right now. Geno Stone's been a good safety for them. Kyle Hamilton. You want to focus on one guy who could wreck your game? It's Kyle Hamilton.
Big safety.
Yeah. 2 identical sacks early in that game on Gardner Minshew, who holds on to the ball too long, which is also what I'm concerned about with Deshaun Watson holding on to the ball too long. So if you want to do one thing, Kevin Stefanski, roll him away from the shown pressure. Just roll him away from Kyle Hamilton. If at all possible, get him out on the run. Just mix it up a little bit. Don't let him sit back there because, in my opinion, his clock is still not 100% on time. And that's a recipe for disaster if you let the Ravens get after him defensively.
Yeah, and I think, I've heard some fans say this, and I think it's a fair debate, that because I'm with you. I think with Deshaun Watson, okay, is he as athletic and as elusive as Lamar Jackson? No. There's
no, he looks like he's running kind of in quicksand right now.
Yes. Yeah, he doesn't look, but I think on design runs, and I've heard some fans say, well, you're $230 million guaranteed, and you want him in the pocket, and I get all of that, but I think right now I just want to see him moving the chains, whether that's his feet, whether that's him throwing the football, just getting into the flow of an offense. of this offense. And, if that's, again, I'm not saying be reckless with it, and I don't think Kevin Stefanski or Deshaun would want to do that. But I do think, to your point, that there are some calls out there that can be had for Deshaun Watson with his feet to, make some plays. And then, not to the extent that Lamar Jackson can do it, but we talk about it all the time, talked about it earlier. A defense gets so demoralized when you think you've got the play, snuffed out and, we're good to go.
Oh, yeah.
And perfect coverage, and then bam, he darts out of there. He can still do that. I think he's going to need to do that Sunday at Cleveland Browns Stadium.
Do you remember it was a Monday night game? I think it was the playoff season of 2020 when the Ravens came to town late in the year, and Lamar may or may not have had the runs. And I don't mean the running out of the pocket. I mean running to the locker room to use the facilities.
I do remember that.
He had a play in that game where he did exactly that. He improvised, went down the field. It was demoralizing. And that was a great game, by the way. If you want to replay and just don't get to the end, go back and watch that game. But I think you're right.
Tucker guy, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Look, I was at the game when the Browns had their game-winning field goal attempt returned for a touchdown, a walk-off touchdown. Okay, so you want to talk about Browns-Ravens bad moments? I've been there. I'm right there with you. Here's the thing about Deshaun Watson that I really love that you said there. Sometimes you just want to see him move the chains. That's been this offense's biggest issue.
Yeah.
That's all they needed to do in week 2 in Pittsburgh. Going down the stretch, and you felt like Pittsburgh's pinning their ears back. They're going to blitz them because they know that it's 3rd and long. They're not going to be able to move the chains. What was really encouraging from last week was that of Deshaun Watson's total pass attempts, he was a perfect 13 for 13 on short passes, 0 to 9 yards. He only attempted 8 passes from 10 or more air yards downfield. So everything was short. They were getting him comfortable. That's how you get a guy in the rhythm. That's what the Bengals have done with Joe Burrow when he's had an issue. That's what they did in week 2 and kind of did last night against the Rams. So I think the short game is going to matter for you more than anything. And then if you are going to go downfield, yeah, you would like to see him improvise a little bit because you paid him all this money, just like you said. The design runs, I like to use that situationally. I'm thinking about even just for me as a Madden player, for example.
Yeah.
I like to run a little read option on the goal line. The Lions just did that with Jared Goff on Sunday, and Calais Campbell was left wondering, wow, I just got beat to the goal line by Jared Goff, who's not the fleetest of foot. So using Deshaun's strengths to his advantage in situations that make sense matters more than just, hey, he can run. Why don't we run with him more?
And one last thing to what you just said about the underneath stuff, because I thought that was very, very important, not only for Deshaun Watson, but Kevin Stefanski, because over time we've seen Kevin Stefanski just, and I've used this analogy before, the square peg in the round hole, and damn it, we're going to keep trying and trying and trying.
Well, that was Ryan Day on Saturday night.
Yeah, well, yeah, him too. Maybe if we have time, we'll talk about that game as well. But
not enough time in the world to talk about that.
That was an interesting, man. Didn't it sound like Howard Dean at the end when he went, we're going to go to Pittsburgh and we're going to go to Cleveland. We're going to that sounded like Ryan Day.
It sounded like Newt Rockney. Inside him, outside him, inside him, outside him. You got to get him on the run. You got to keep him on the run. We're not going to stop till we get across that goal line. Once again, today's the day we're going to win. Yeah.
Kind of reminded me of Rudy
That's
there.
exactly what that was.
But I really thought that Kevin Stefanski, when it comes to, hey, you know what? Let's take it. Let's take what they're giving us. I don't need to, outsmart. And I thought it was, I don't want to make too much of it, but I do think, okay, hey, quarterback and head coach are on the same page, and head coach maybe more than anybody is saying, you know what? If they're going to play soft and they're afraid of us beating them downfield, then we're just going to take it underneath. I think that's a step in the right direction for Kevin Stefanski as well.
Yeah, and I think that's not what you're going to see in Baltimore. Well, when they play Baltimore and Cleveland, because that's not Mike McDonald's MO as a defensive coordinator. That's not what they've done traditionally as a club.
Used to be at Michigan.
Yeah, it's just not what they do. They're more aggressive than that. But I am very encouraged by it because it takes some of the ambitious play calling out of it, which is I think where they always get into some hot water, is trying to be too cute, trying to get too creative. Getting things underneath completed helps a lot. It also really helped that Deshaun was able to keep his eyes downfield when the pass rush was bearing down on him, which
something
he
that
did
you've
not do.
Emphasized a lot.
Yeah, he did not do against Pittsburgh. That was probably the most encouraging thing of all, was being able to complete passes out of structure. That's going to be really important in this game.
Last thing I'll say before we get to the numbers that matter on this game, and I know we make the case every week is huge, and this is must win, and I know you said just get to 2-2, and I agree with that, but I also feel like I think of what everybody felt like last week. And I know Chubb being out was the prevailing feeling. But I feel like a win over Baltimore, because you do have 2 weeks, a win over Baltimore heading into that bye week, I feel like it could be such a boost to this club. You're 3-1, you beat Baltimore because you've got a lot of momentum now. We saw how that momentum got absolutely just taken away and cruelly taken away last week in Pittsburgh. I want to see, at the very least, I want to see a good performance, but I want to see a W more than anything else. I don't want that sour taste in your mouth for 2 weeks with the bye week coming so early.
I think it's somebody who has a bigger brain than me and works in science.
That's impossible.
I mean, I have a big bald head, but the brain is not taking up most of this real estate. They should do some sort of study on the emotional change in a football fan from week to week, because football is a weekly sport, and the Browns and Cleveland would be a great case study in this. Because
yes, they would be a great case study. Yeah.
This city has experienced the highest of highs and almost the lowest of lows. It's not like the drive or the fumble low, but for a regular season game, it was pretty low. And now everybody's soaring high again. I would like to see how we feel a week from now and continue to measure it all the way through the season. Statistically, with numbers and smart people things that I'm not privy to. And
like heart rate, pulse, all that. Yeah,
happiness
I totally
scale,
agree.
like the 10 happiest cities on earth. Let's find the happiness scale by NFL market. Let's do this, okay? Because Cleveland could have a potential to shatter these rankings or fall right through the floor, and you're never going to be able to tell on a week-by-week basis. Every time we come in here, it's a completely different tone through 3 weeks. High, low, high. Where are we going to be next week? I don't know. I'm picking the Browns to win, by the way, but I don't know. I'm kind of looking ahead past the bye week to San Francisco because, look, you have a great opportunity here. 2-1. What did we say? Get to 2-2, just like you said. You could be 3-1 going into the bye. You come out 3-1 against the most likely 4-0 San Francisco 49ers, who play Arizona this weekend, which is why I just made that mistake. Who has scored exactly 30 points in each of their games, which is a remarkable achievement if you think about it, just because of the variety of different scores in football. I don't think they're going to put 30 points on the Browns, but the Browns need to be in a position where they have to be feeling really, really good about that game. The last time that they played in a game of significance against the 49ers, do you remember?
Man.
I was there. That was one of the worst cross-country flights of my life. I don't recommend doing that again. So it
Kyle
starts
Shanahan
this week.
had that defense on roller skates that game. Oh, my God.
It was like one of the first plays in the game. Demarius Randall gets turned. It was ugly. It was really ugly. It was tough to watch from that press box. But it starts this week. Do not look past this team. They're not going to. It's a division game. You have an opportunity to move to first place in your division. You have an opportunity to score an important division win over a rival that has been a thorn in your side for a long time. You want to be the thorn in their side. If you think that you're this good and you have a defense that can win a championship, this is a game that proves it. So go do it, and then we can talk about San Francisco, and then we can talk about that study. Because if they win both those games, there is no limit. The dials go past 11 in this town if they win both those games.
Yes, they do. All right, we'll get to what was a wild week 3 in the NFL here in just a moment. Recap some of the highlights from a crazy week. But before we do that, we've got the much talked about, much ballyhooed, I will say now, through 3 weeks, numbers that matter. And the number we're going to start with, numbers that matter on the bald breakdown with Chico Borman and Nick Shook, is 95. The significance of 95, Mr. Shook, is?
Well, that happens to be Myles Garrett's jersey number, but we're not going there. That was a coincidence.
I thought that's where you were going.
Nope.
I really did. No.
Even though you can see it right in front of you.
Yeah.
Amari Cooper. I just talked about how Deshaun Watson completed most of his passes underneath. Amari Cooper gained 95 of his 116 receiving yards on targets over 10 air yards. Now, we know he's been the downfield guy for Deshaun, but the fact that they were able to actually kind of figure it out was super encouraging. He had 4 catches on 5 targets for 95 yards and a touchdown, plus 2.8 receptions over expected in week 3, according to Next Gen Stats. That's a little tidbit I tweeted out last night. That was his 4th most in a game since 2016. He's catching passes that are not expected to be caught because, in part, on-target throws on time, and he should have had more.
That was a great call by that official. Now,
Yeah.
I said yesterday, I need to move this here, that I don't know if they have, like in basketball, right, getting a good defensive stance, right? The official he's literally looking right down on the sideline, Nick.
You see his brain process?
Hands on the quads. He's staring at Amari Cooper's foot. And in seeing his foot is also seeing about another 3 feet of grass.
He didn't trust his own eyes. That's what happened. He looked down there and went, did he really stay in bounds? I don't think he stayed in bounds. I'm going to blow that dead.
I think he thought, if Amari stumbled a little bit, so he just, yeah.
There's no way he has that type of balance. Yeah, this is why officials, you probably noticed this if you've watched a good amount of football this year, fumbles that may not be fumbles and could be incomplete passes, officials are letting those go. They're instructed by the head of officiating in the league to do that because you cannot overturn a play that's blown dead, but you can overturn a play that is allowed to continue to the end, whether it's returned for a touchdown or whatever else. You can come back and fix that. So he should have done that.
Yeah,
should have done that.
This is, I think, my favorite of the week as far as numbers that matter. 13 involving Deshaun Watson. Explain yourself, Nick Shook.
I will happily do that. 13 for 14 on targets to players aligned wide. That means we're not playing the little slots underneath. We're not throwing the running back out of the backfield. He is able to find guys near the boundary. Now, just because they're aligned wide doesn't mean the end wide. They could be crossing over the field. But the ability to find success with the guy who's lined up furthest away from you.
Yeah.
That's a good indicator of some arm strength, some comfort, some ability to trust your eyes and go through your progression. Now, some of those could just be what Joe Burrow's been doing in Cincinnati, which is just drop back, I don't know where to go, throw it down the sideline at Jamar Chase, hope it works out. It did work out briefly for them last night, and they won the game, but it's more than that with the Browns right now.
All right, numbers that matter. Nick gets a little nerdy here. Anytime there's decimal points involved, 0.61. What is the significance of 0.61?
61's a jersey number I wore for a long time. So we got a lot of great numbers here. 95, 13, 61.
Why would you pick 61?
Because I was a lineman, and the 6 is wide because you can only have a 5 or a 6 or a 7, and then the 1 is skinny, so it makes you look skinnier as an offensive lineman. Fun fact out there for you chunkers who are playing up front.
Yeah, it's Go entertain your friends and family at the taverns this weekend with that. Why did Nick Shook wear 61?
I'm telling you, it's a good number. It's a good number. My dad also wore it. Myles Garrett's average get-off through 3 weeks, 0.61 seconds per Next Gen Stats. That is the fastest in the NFL with a minimum of 50 pass rushes. I don't think you understand how fast 0.6 of a second is for a get-off. There's a reason he gets an occasional offsides penalty or an encroachment because... for comparison, in Formula One, when races start and you get to the third lap, they go back.
A little racing analogy.
They measure reaction time between some of the lead cars, and it always lands in the 0.2, high 0.2, low 0.3. Miles is getting off of the line of scrimmage in double that time, which is still significantly below 1 second. Anticipation and execution, he is playing at an elite level right now, and it's great to watch.
I'll tell you what, he was so good and has been so good. Why don't we continue with Myles Garrett? How about the number 6?
We get 6 twice here. I'm going to go through both of them real quick. He generated 6 pressures on 3 sacks on 19 pass rush attempts against the aforementioned Andre Dillard, the left tackle for the Titans this week.
Not good this week.
A pressure rate of 31.6% in his matchups against Dillard. He found a lot of success, and I don't think it really matters about matchup. This is a guy who's playing at an elite level right now. 6 is also the number of third downs that the Browns converted.
I thought you were going to make a Baker Mayfield reference.
6 is also the number of the quarterback who lost on Monday Night Football. 6 of 13 they went on third down, which is encouraging. You're near 50%. That's where you want to be as an offense right now, especially when you look on the other side of the field and you saw that the Titans converted 2 of 12, which is not winning football. So the Browns getting closer, and a lot of that, again, has to do with the short completions.
Let's skip ahead one. Let's go 10. The number 10, numbers that matter.
Oh, that's for the 10-yard line, which the Browns have not allowed opposing offenses to cross this year.
These numbers just get crazier and crazier as we get closer and closer. I mean, it's just or week after week. It's nuts.
I went through all the statistics last night. In the rankings for see where the Browns landed, just to verify, double check, make sure my eyes were seeing what I was seeing. They have a 0.0 in goal-to-go situation percent because they haven't been in a goal-to-go situation through 3 games, which is remarkable. I don't know if I've ever seen that.
Yeah, they again, 1 touchdown in 34 offensive possessions for teams, which is, again.
That was what, the Pickens touchdown?
Yeah.
Pittsburgh?
The broken
The
coverage.
coverage,
Yeah, that night, that was it. That was it. All right, real quick, before we get out of here, and of course get ready for the Ravens Browns coming up on Sunday. Nick, this was I think we always say it was a wild week in the NFL. This was we were watching out here in the lounge area at our studios here at Burke Lakefront Airport, and we're seeing the score of the Miami-Denver game just continue to roll in. I'm like, are these just 56, now 60, 70? I mean, I don't know if it's karma. I don't know what it is, but Sean Payton had a few things to say about his predecessor and Nathaniel Hackett. And look, he wasn't great last year with the Broncos, but giving up 70 to the Miami Dolphins and Mike McDaniel.
You know, it was a weekend in which a Costco-sized shipment of humble pie was delivered to the greater Denver area. We could talk about the Denver Broncos. We could talk about the Colorado Buffaloes. They both got a nice dose of humble pie this weekend, and I think that Sean Payton certainly received more than his own healthy serving for the Thanksgiving table. 10 touchdowns for the Miami Dolphins. This is a Broncos team that lost week 1 by 1 point, week 2 by 2 points. And they blew that game in week 2, by the way. They should have won that game. They had an 18-point lead in that game. You gave up 70. The Dolphins are awesome, okay?
Oh, yeah.
They are. They are probably the fastest team in the NFL. They're the most explosive team in the NFL, and they have a guy who is on the cutting edge of offensive schematics with this group, a number of different players, but really it all comes down to Tua Tagovailoa, who's playing like the best quarterback in the league right now.
You know what I love about McDaniel, too, is, we made a lot of this about Sean Payton because, well, he's Sean Payton, and because he did have the words, before the season and all of that, and then he wasn't happy in the press conference, as you wouldn't expect. But
what's the question?
Mike McDaniel was a guy that he grew up. I didn't realize this. He grew up in Denver. He's a
ball boy.
Ball boy.
Yeah.
And when they were looking for a head coach a few years back, they didn't even interview him.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, but that's pretty rich. That's got to feel pretty damn good for a guy. Like, you don't say that, but deep down you're like, I wasn't good enough for it to even get an interview.
Yeah.
How's a 70 burger taste?
Drop a 50-point deficit on you right now. How about this? Elway and the folks from Walmart who now own the Broncos, who have no responsibility in this entire little conflict between the two. How about this? I wasn't good enough for the team, my hometown team. Now I am good enough to send you home questioning everything about life.
Bengals get the victory last night. Joe Burrow. You know what I'm seeing with Joe Burrow, and I don't think it's next level or anything on my part, but he was able to get through that game without seemingly any tweak of the calf. But he clearly, like when you watch, they always talk about a quarterback when he plants that back foot and then fires a dart.
Yeah,
he doesn't have the ability. I don't know when he's going to get that ability to do it, but it's almost like, he's good enough to keep that offense going, but until he can do that, he's just not going to be the same Joe Burrow, and they're not going to be the same Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, I hit a point watching that game last night before that touchdown drive, so maybe it was right around halftime where I was like, man, I think that calf just, like, he can't really drive the ball. He's missing guys. It's just not getting there, and I don't think he feels comfortable. He doesn't have the option to run because he really can't run. And I also think he was showing some rust. They talked about it a ton on the broadcast. He was showing some rust from not getting the practice reps during the week. He's just not in a great place right now, but they were able to win that game, probably because the Rams lack offensive firepower, and the Bengals defense really won that game for them, which was a bit of a surprise. It's nice to see him get on track, Joe Burrow, but he only gets on track for like a quarter or a series or 2 series, and then it disappears again. So I don't think everything's fine and dandy there, and this is going to be a recurring issue for them.
Okay, so last thing, Chargers-Vikings. If the Chargers lose that game to Minnesota, and that was a wild ending, Kirk Cousins kind of forgetting, I don't know what that was. Like,
well, they lost Justin Jefferson to injury, so he wasn't on the field for that play, and that hurt them.
Yeah, but shouldn't you know to clock it? Like, Justin Jefferson or not, he should probably know, like, I gotta stop the clock.
Yeah, they're taking a lot of time.
But let's say the Chargers don't. They are not able to hold off yet another comeback. Are we talking about Brandon Staley looking for another job. I mean, that would have been another blown lead for Brandon Staley.
Well, I think if any coach is going to get fired early, it's probably Matt Eberflus.
Yes.
Brandon Staley did have people calling for his firing. I thought he was going to get fired last year for the way that they collapsed in the playoffs. And that decision, I think some analytic firms will tell you that was the right move analytically, because what I think you're dealing with is absolute result, like guaranteed result. You get the first down, that game's over. Versus less than guaranteed result. If you punt, you give them an opportunity to come back. So I get why it would be like, that's a go situation. But common sense, folks, can we blend the two? Can we blend analytics and common sense? You're going for it on your own 24. You're asking for the football gods to make you pay. So yeah, I think that a lot of people would have been calling for his job.
All right. He is Nick Shook. He is with NFL.com and the NFL Network. You can follow him on Twitter at the Nick Shook. You got a podcast. Go ahead and plug all of those different things.
Let's list it all. Here we go. Yeah. The Gridiron Podcast you can find on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We do football and Formula One typically once a week. You can check us out, on YouTube as well. Let's also do the QB Index, the Air Index, brought to you by FedEx.
Brought to you by FedEx.
That runs every Thursday on NFL.com. NFL.com/QB Index. You can find it there. I will be going home and working on that right after this. What else do I have to plug? You could find me on Twitter at the Nick Shook. You can also find me on Twitch, the Nick Shook, where we do the podcast. I play a little Madden. We talk football. We talk about the QB Index. I hear your complaints, and we venture off into the world of Thanksgiving side dishes if you want to.
He gives you, weightlifting tips and
that
stuff
too.
like that.
Yeah, we could do that too.
Yeah, he is Nick Shook. I'm Mike Chico Borman again. Getting ready. Week 4, it is a biggie. The Baltimore Ravens coming to town. First place on the line. We're going to talk about it and basically go through it all, and hopefully we're celebrating a win over Baltimore and a first-place Cleveland Browns team heading into an early bye. Yes, their early bye week, week 5, but first the Baltimore Ravens await. We will do it next week on the Bold Bald Breakdown. Myself, Nick Shook, right here on the Big Play Sports Network. We'll take a break. When we come back, Mary Kay Cabot, Cleveland.com and the Cleveland Plain Dealer. She'll weigh in on the dominant Browns defense and also looking ahead to the Ravens as well. More to come right here on the Chico Borman Show. All righty, we are back on a Tuesday edition of the Chico Borman Show here on the Big Play Sports Network. Good stuff from Nick Shook as we went along and basically dived into every bit of Week 3. The big win for the Browns over the Tennessee Titans, and the defense continues to be dominant. As I said, I really believe we could do an entire Numbers That Matter segment on the Browns defense. They have been that dominant. I'm looking at per Pro Football Focus, minimum 15 snaps. Browns top performers. Myles Garrett graded out at 93.3. By the way, Nick was talking about Mo Hurst. He said, let's not forget about him, who's been playing very well, 89.6. Alex Wright, 90.5. I mean, all these guys are getting into the act. All these guys are having a good time on defense, and that's what happens when you've got the talent they do, when you've got a scheme and a guy directing it. The maestro in Jim Schwartz, a lot of fun and a dominant defense. And like I said yesterday, it's not hyperbole. This is right now through 3 weeks. They are the top defense in the league. I haven't seen one better. Don't believe me. Nick watches all the video, watches all the film, and he hasn't seen one either. So that's just the way it is. Browns, though, get ready for the Baltimore Ravens coming up on Sunday at Cleveland Browns Stadium. We will shortly be talking to Mary Kay Cabot of Cleveland.com and the Cleveland Plain Dealers. So looking forward to that. I just think, and I know we say this every week about, it's a huge game and they got to have this one. I mean, certainly the way things have played out so far, we're not looking at this game as, oh my gosh, you can lose the division. They're 2-1. If they were 2-2, it wouldn't be the end of the world. But man, I saw, and I know a lot of last week's disappointment really was centered around Nick Chubb. I mean, I said it. We all said it, that, the loss to Pittsburgh sucked, but it was really more about losing Nick Chubb, not only for that game, but for the rest of the season and all that he brings to the table, not only on the football field, but in the locker room. So I'm not saying like you go to that level, but like it's been so up and down, and if they have a performance, which I don't anticipate, but if they have a performance where they come out and it's just a dud, they lay an egg. And again, the way this defense is playing, I find that very hard to believe. But if they do, now all of a sudden you've got 2 weeks to think about it, and then you've got San Francisco coming up next. Like, I'm getting greedy. I mean, forgive me, I'm getting greedy. I not only want another W, I want them to go into this bye week with a lot of confidence, feeling really good about themselves, because that San Francisco game, I think Nick's right. I mean, we talk about, the tests and on both sides of the ball that the San Francisco 49ers will present. They're going to be there. And but first things first, you've got a division game against a divisional opponent who is really, Lamar Jackson has played very well historically against Cleveland. He's a guy that can take your soul, not just, throwing the football, but running the football. And it's one of those things where you have a defense that has played so well and has been so dominant getting after the quarterback. This is that guy that can play that Houdini act and get out of that trouble, and not only get out of the trouble and maybe make a play downfield, but more importantly, I mean, this guy ran for 100 yards last week against Indianapolis, albeit in a loss. He can hurt you. He can hurt you with his legs as much as his arms, and even more so with those legs. So as we await Mary Kay Cabot and get her thoughts on this big matchup coming up on Sunday, we can also hear from you here on the Chico Borman Show, 216-626-7901. You can stream us each and every day on Twitter at Chico Show CLE. You want to find us on YouTube, do that as well. The YouTube channel, The Chico Borman Show, hit subscribe. And, of course, we are now live each and every day on the iHeartRadio app as we do the show for you noon until 2. Matt Fontana is before me, and he is on 9 to 11. So you can check all of that out live on the iHeartRadio app. And, of course, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts, you can download the podcast as well. So plenty of opportunities to get big play wherever you need to get it, wherever you want to get it, and get caught up on everything that's going on in the Cleveland sports world. And not just, and tomorrow is going to be, I know we're talking a lot of football, and we're going to continue that with Mary Kay, but tomorrow, I know I'm going to be heading to Progressive Field. We do have some baseball we're going to be talking about tomorrow with our buddy Brett Boone. Terry Francona, final home game in a storied career. And certainly here in Cleveland, so we'll be talking about that on tomorrow's show. But we're talking plenty of Browns, and why not? We're all feeling great. And Mary Kay Cabot, of course, has been covering the Cleveland Browns for many, many years for Cleveland.com and The Plain Dealer, analyst for WKYC TV. Just does a great job year after year after year. So happy to have her on the Chico Borman Show here on the Big Play Sports Network. Mary Kay, how are you this afternoon?
I'm doing great, Chico. How you doing?
Well, I just had Nick Shook on in the first hour, and we were going through the defensive numbers, and I feel like we do a segment called Numbers That Matter, and I said last hour that it feels like we could have an entire hour just breaking all these numbers that are just mind-boggling when you break down how great this defense has been through 3 games. I'll start with this. We knew that the defense was going to be much improved. We know that Andrew Berry, it was at the top of his list. I mean, he had a comprehensive checklist. We got to improve interior of that line. But did we think with that and the addition of Jim Schwartz, they would be this dominant through 3 games?
No, I don't think so. I certainly didn't think they would be this dominant through 3 games, especially considering that they were all new. So many new pieces and parts and so many new guys. I thought it would take them a while to perhaps gel. But Jim Schwartz has simplified it to the degree that, they know their assignment. I mean, it's just very clear to all of them what they are supposed to be doing and when they are supposed to be doing it. The other thing to keep in mind, and, I hate to throw any little tiny bit of water on anything, but I mean, they really haven't played the juggernaut offenses of the NFL yet. And I think that's important to note because, we don't want to christen them the 85 Bears. And then all of a sudden, you go out and Lamar Jackson does some things against them. And then Kyle Shanahan comes in here and figures out some areas that he can attack. So, I think we just need to temper the enthusiasm a slight bit. But for the most part, I think I am seeing a dominant defense, and it should be sustainable for the most part throughout the season.
You've seen a lot of football covering the Browns, a lot of Browns football, but just football in general. Have you ever seen one guy, like we're used to seeing it flipped, where, okay, a tight end goes in motion, defensive back goes with it. Myles Garrett is going back and forth on the line of scrimmage, and 2 tight ends from Tennessee. Look, maybe it's happened before. I've never seen it, but to me, that was like the microcosm where you said, okay, this is what Myles Garrett will do to your game plan. Tennessee finally said, all right, we'll send 2 guys with you, and then we'll have to call timeout because we don't know what the hell to do with them.
Yeah, it was pretty unique to see that. No, I had not really seen anything like that before, and it just shows you the kind of attention you have to commit to Myles Garrett to try to stop him. It's the same thing you have to do, with a TJ Watt. You just can't let those guys roam free. And Andre Dillard was completely overmatched, and they just didn't have enough other pieces on their offensive line. It amazes me that more teams in the NFL don't build strong through the lines. That's what the Browns have done. They've sort of torn a page from some other teams. I mean, I remember Andrew Berry saying that he learned some of that from Ryan Grigson. He did not do enough to protect Andrew Luck, and he learned the hard way. You've got to build a really strong offensive line. And then the Browns also have built an incredible defensive line, which sort of is what the Philadelphia Eagles have done. And we know that Andrew worked there under Howie Roseman for a bit. And so, they're kind of following that model, and it's effective. If you have a really good O line and D line, there's a lot of things that you can do and overcome.
So I was enjoying, and full disclosure, as many people I'm sure are, I am a subscriber to the Cleveland.com, the Insider, so I can get the inside info from Mary Kay Cabot and all of her great colleagues. And I've been enjoying, you wrote about all these guys that, from the secondary to Zadarius Smith to Jeremiah Usu-Cormoa, that they're caught up in the moment. I mean, obviously they've got their own jobs to do and they're doing them well, but it's not lost on them just how great Myles Garrett has been. Like, Mary Kay, when you're talking to these guys, they're gushing about Myles Garrett, are they not?
They really are. I mean, when you come off of a 3.5 sack game and you do some of the things that he does, it's hard not to really sing his praises, and that's what everyone is doing. I asked Juan Thornhill about him yesterday on the Zoom conference that we had with him, and he just went on and on. This is the first time he's played with Myles Garrett. He said he's much better than I even thought he was. I'm sure Zadarius is seeing some things, and Obo. These guys are just blown away by the things that Myles is doing. And we'll have to see how the Ravens are going to try to, minimize the damage he can do. And again, we're going to have to see what Kyle Shanahan is going to come up with, because you just can't let Myles Garrett wreck the game every single week.
Yeah, and I love that Kevin Stefanski said that. It's not like, we didn't know it already, but he emphasized again, look, it's not like every meeting room throughout the NFL when they're looking at tape of the Browns defense. Okay, this guy right here, 9'5", we've got to be able to slow him down. And yet Kevin said he still wrecks every single game plan. One last thing on him, and I thought it was funny, and I did not know this. I never would have thought about this until reading your piece on Myles. And he was saying before the game, he's like, yeah, my hand moves weren't real great, and I wasn't having a good – I didn't even think about that. Like, you think of a starting pitcher. Well, my bullpen was bad. I didn't have my curveball, or someone warming up before a basketball game. I couldn't throw it in the ocean, but then the game started. Here's Myles saying, yeah, I had a really bad pregame. My hand moves, but it worked out okay. I had 3.5 sacks. I didn't even know he went through that sort of thing with, getting ready for the opening kick.
Yeah, you know what? They all do. They all have their pregame routine. They go down there, they warm up. It's cool to watch when you're down there. You can kind of see, how guys get their game faces on. And and he did not feel great about it. And I thought that was an interesting anecdote, as you mentioned, for him to say that he just wasn't feeling it. And then he was trying some pass rush moves that weren't necessarily working. He was trying some new tricks out of the toolbox, and they weren't necessarily working for him. He just started like screaming off the edge, and that's what seemed to get the job done. So it is cool to hear the process and how Myles goes about his business. And the point that I was trying to make when I wrote that story is the fact that he really kind of climbed back into the conversation for NFL Defensive Player of the Year. Right. And he needed to, because TJ was starting to run away with it. I mean, TJ is lights out this year. And I'm talking about TJ Watt, of course. And TJ is up to 6 sacks already, and he had 3 in his first game. He had 2 this past week against the who did they just beat? The Raiders. And so he absolutely is starting to run away with the thing. And Myles had only 1 sack heading into last week's game, and he was tied with dozens of other guys at number 35 with only 1 sack. And if he came out of this game with just maybe 1 or 1.5, you're starting to see quite the gap between him and TJ. And now he's right up there with him. He's number 3 in the NFL with 4.5 sacks, and it keeps him in the conversation, which is going to keep him real interested.
A few more minutes talking to Mary Kay Cabot, covering the Cleveland Browns for Cleveland.com and the Cleveland Plain Dealer. And Mary Kay, we know that, well, every year it's a roller coaster of emotions up and down. But even through these 3 games, I mean, an incredible performance against Cincinnati where they dominated Joe Burrow and that offense. And then, of course, Pittsburgh last week. And, it wasn't just the loss, obviously. It was the loss of Nick Chubb and how that hit the locker room. How are the guys, winning does a lot to cure a lot of that, but how are the guys bouncing back, and how much is Nick Chubb still a part of what these guys do each and every day?
Well, they have dedicated their season to him, and I think that's going to help carry them throughout this very difficult, high stakes season. All they have to do is remember that Nick Chubb wanted to be here, that he can't be with them, and I really think that he is going to continue to be a lot of their inspiration and motivation for the season. But as Kevin Stefanski mentioned, by Tuesday, when those guys came into the building, he could see the resolve in their eyes. He could see that we are ready to move forward and that we're going to do everything that we can to pull together and rally around this loss and use it as motivation and make sure that they are representing Nick Chubb, the heart and soul of the team, really well. And then I think it really helped to have Kareem Hunt come back into the fold. I think that was a huge morale boost for these guys. He's family. Nobody wanted to see him go on that football team in the first place. He came back lighter, leaner, meaner, ready to go, ready to run through a wall. And I just think that really helped pick up the spirits of everyone.
As we go over to the offensive side of the ball, and of course, all the talk has been focused on the defense. Deshaun Watson had a very good game, and I think very encouraging game for some fans. There's still, a long ways to go, and I think he would admit that. But what did you see in Game 3 on Sunday that maybe we didn't see in 1 and 2 that kind of was encouraging and should be encouraging for fans moving forward?
That's easy. It was poise. It was composure. It was trying not to do too much, trying not to press. He pressed in that Pittsburgh Steelers game. And it was funny because I asked him afterwards, when Nick went out, do you feel like you kind of pressed? And he was like, no, I don't really think I did that. Well, then by the time he went back and watched the film and we talked to him again and we talked to him after this past game, he was like, you know what? I didn't force anything. I didn't press. He did press in that Steelers game. And as Joel Bitonio pointed out, they kind of panicked collectively after a pick six on the first play and then Nick Chubb going out. And I think part of the fact, a testament to the fact that Deshaun Watson did kind of lose it a little bit was the fact that he was getting flagged for face mask penalties, 2 of them. When do you ever see that with a quarterback? So he did lose it. He got fined for that. And he pulled it back together this game. And even though he had some adversity in the game, he still was able to collect himself and go out and do what he needed to do to win the game. Now, let's remember, this is a bad pass defense.
Sure.
Okay. Like, we have to call things like they really are. We have to keep it real. This was a bad pass defense, and it's just not all that hard to throw for 289 yards on this football team. They do that a lot, but still, it was a confidence booster for Deshaun. People had written him off. People had said he was broken. People had said he was finished. And I think he went out there and showed that, hey, I'm not finished yet. Don't write me off.
Do you think? I mean, obviously, we've been following this since he signed, and I mentioned this last week. You talked about the emotions, and it kind of got the best of him in the Pittsburgh game. The human side of this is, I mean, do you think that there's a part of him? Everybody wants to be liked, including Deshaun Watson. Now, for some people, that's going to be nearly impossible. I'm not trying to put you in a bad spot here. I'm just trying to kind of delve a little bit deeper into Deshaun. Like, is it a case where he wants to exude that, hey, everything's cool, everything's fine, I'm in a great place in my life, and I've moved past it, when really, it's tough. You want to be liked by everybody, and that's just not going to be the case right now or anytime soon moving forward throughout not just Cleveland, but the National Football League.
Well, I think he recognizes that part of his narrative throughout the rest of his career is going to be those off the field issues and what he basically brought upon himself. And I think he understands that that he's not going to easily escape that, and that when he has bad games, that people are going to view him through the prism and the lens of his off the field issues. And so when people pile onto him, it's not just football, it's more than that. And he recognizes that, and he knows it comes with the territory. And I think that's why, if he wants to just play good football, he's going to have to realize that he can't be listening to all the criticism. He can't be getting himself involved in all the social media stuff. He's just got to put those blinders on and go out and do what the Browns bought him and paid him to do, and try the best he possibly can to not get himself, just completely derailed by all of the off the field stuff.
It certainly would make life easier for him if the guys up front are a little bit better. And, look, you have an injury to Jack Conklin. DeJuan Jones has been, I think, a great find, but he's struggled. He's going to struggle, at least in the run game he has so far. Jed Wills, man, I mean, he seems like a great kid. You want him to do well, but he has struggled as well. How much of a concern is it moving forward? I know they've got a great O-line coach in Bill Callahan, but I mean, those are two very important positions. You've got a quarterback who's trying to, get back his confidence. How important are those guys up front for him?
Well, obviously very, very important. And I think one thing to remember is that DeJuan Jones is coming up the learning curve very quickly. And I think he's going to be an amazing fixture and addition to the Cleveland Browns for many, many years to come. And it's really cool to watch him. And I really like him a lot. I got to spend time talking to him one-on-one during training camp. And I really, really enjoy his personality. And when Cleveland gets to know him for who he is, I think fans are just going to love him. As far as Jed is concerned, he hasn't gotten the chipping help that he normally would because they've had to give it to DeJuan. I mean, he was going up against TJ Watt, so they had to commit their resources over there. And Jed ended up, holding his own as long as he possibly could, and then he just wasn't able to on that decisive final sack strip TD of the game in Pittsburgh. So that's what people remember. But Jed has been left a lot on an island, a little bit more so than he normally would be, because they're trying to get DeJuan's career off the ground and not let him get his quarterback hurt. So I think as they go along and they break it down again at the bye week, which is coming after this game already, too early, but what can you do? I think they will find ways to make sure that Jed is getting the help that he needs to.
All right, so you referenced talking to DeJuan Jones, and I've got to ask you the question: how is he able to make 31 grown men cry?
And you know what? Like I said, if anybody gets a chance to read that story, you can kind of get to know a little bit more about DeJuan in it. And he is chasing Joe Thomas's legacy, is what he told me. I think that's so cool that he wants to be that great. But the way you make 31 grown men cry is to become a great tackle in the NFL, because everybody passed on him and then they passed on him again and passed on him again. And he wants to make those 31 other GMs sorry that they did not draft him in the NFL. And he wants to go out there and prove everyone wrong.
Mary Kay, it is always a pleasure being able to track you down. I know you've got a very busy schedule, and I know last week, boom, I was thinking of you because I thought after last week, that Pittsburgh game, losing Nick Chubb, that was definitely going to be one of the Mary Kay Cabot. What is the hashtag, boom, that you really enjoy from her?
Get mommy a beer.
Yeah, that seemed last week was probably Get Mommy a Beer week, right? That was
yes. Yes, it definitely was a Get Mommy a Beer week. No question about it.
You are fantastic at what you do, and we appreciate you taking some time for us. We hope to talk to you again soon. Thank you, Mary Kay.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot. Take care.
All right. That is, again, Mary Kay Cabot, Cleveland.com, and The Plain Dealer. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, a little fair or foul with Mr. Bombastic. It's the Chico Borman Show with you till 2 right here on the Big Play Sports Network. Welcome back on this Tuesday afternoon. Browns 2-1, so we're all feeling good as they get ready for the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday. Those hated Baltimore Ravens coming to Cleveland Browns Stadium. First place on the line. I agree with Mary Kay. The bye week, I mean, it is what it is. I'm not going to say it's a make or break type thing, but it is too early. Like, you're just getting going. It takes a month just to get, like, okay, now we're starting to get, because you don't have that preseason. You don't have that real ramp up. So, like, just when you start to get going and have that first month, first 4 games under your belt, it's like, well, you got 2 weeks. Yeah, I know you can work on some things, and yeah, you might have some guys already banged up. You can get healthy, but too early. Never too early for bet credits for the football season. We all need them. We all want them. And the Big Play Network, well, we've got an opportunity for you because we're presented by Tipico Sportsbook. The Tipico Sportsbook app has your traditional bets like the money line, spread, and point totals, but also lock in player props. Check out our Big Play boosts every single week to back your favorite Cleveland teams and athletes with the best odds in Ohio. Get in the action, load up for football season using promo code BIGPLAY150. You can also use promo code Chico150, that's 150, to get $150 of bet credits on us, plus a $30 dog pound bet. Bet with the Big Play crew all season long with Tipico Sportsbook. Very easy to download that app and get started if you have not already. Also very easy to toss it over to my buddy Michael Bohm for another edition of Fair or Foul.
All right, Chico. Well, I want to start things off with the New England Patriots because it's interesting that I happen to see like 2 different stories about 2 different time periods that regard the Patriots and cheating. So the first one is courtesy of something a little more recent when the Patriots decided to sign Will Grier last week, who was formerly on the Patriots. They're concerned that he's going to be able to convey to them all the hand signals and that they're going to have to change everything up, and basically that the Patriots are going to take their calls. Now, interestingly, Chico, so Ben Roethlisberger, former Steelers quarterback, has a podcast, and on it he had a guest, the Bus, Jerome Bettis, and they both agreed about a specific instance in an AFC Championship matchup in which the Patriots cheated. And what they said was their offensive line their offensive line coach has a signal, right, for when they're changing the play to a counter. And this is a 4th and 1 play. And the Patriots, Jerome notices something weird, right? Like a captain sees something and then goes over to the coach and they call timeout, right? And he said typically when that happens, they know something. If you see that.
So Bettis is saying the Patriots do this.
Yeah, and then they stopped him on that 4th and 1, and they said that was a pivotal play in that game, and it changed the momentum of the game. Fair or foul, Chico, do you think that the Patriots are up to some sort of cheating, and do you think there needs to be an investigation?
Okay, so wait a minute. They're saying Will Grier. Okay, this is kind of just like baseball, though. Like, if you're able to... if we're not talking about technology, like when they were filming and they're getting, signals that way, they're getting plays, that's one thing. But if during the course of a game, if Belichick looks across the sideline or one of his assistant coaches or players and they see something and someone, it's that obvious, it shouldn't be that obvious. If that's going on, then that's fair game. If they are cheating by using, filming and stuff, of course. I mean, that is blatant cheating. I don't call that cheating if they think that they picked up on a signal on the other side of the ball, on the other sideline, I should say, and that they then know, okay, hey, we got a counter coming with Jerome Bettis. Well, I mean, that's kind of what you do. And as far as Grier's concerned, if they can glean anything from him, they're going to. I mean, teams do that. But, I mean, if you're that, put it this way, if your signals are that transparent that a team is able to get them that easily, especially in a game of that magnitude, shame on them. I mean, that's shame on them. That shouldn't happen. That should not happen.
Yeah, Chico, I wonder if any of this will ultimately tarnish Bill's legacy in some way, shape, or form.
I don't think so. That's a good question. I don't think it will, because, it's kind of like why that's such a good question is like Barry Bonds, for instance. Okay, Barry Bonds. You say, well, Barry Bonds didn't need to cheat. Barry Bonds was already a great. Now you can, and this is my argument. They also helped him recover from injuries and play longer and stay, great for longer and all that sort of thing. So why would he cheat? Well, he wanted more money. Why did Bill Belichick cheat? I get that. Like, yeah, why would he? You're a defensive genius, and you're a great head coach. You don't need to. I don't think it will, though, because I think when all is said and done, and he wants that wins record. I mean, Christopher Price has said it. Anybody who knows Bill Belichick and covers the NFL has said, make no mistake, he wants Don Shula's record. I don't think that's going to be part of his legacy, though.
Sure. Now moving on, Chico. I mentioned the Patriots. Now we're both talking about them, but it's interesting that they are because I'm setting up this question horribly. Let me start over.
That's
the Denver
okay,
Broncos, Chico.
We'll just hang on. Go
Take
ahead.
two.
Yeah,
the Denver Broncos are a dumpster fire right now. I think that's fair to say.
Yes.
And with that in mind, it's being rumored that Jerry Jeudy, former first-round pick out of Alabama, is on the market, and two teams that he's being linked to right now are the Patriots and the Browns. And I thought it was interesting that you sprinkled the Browns in there because it feels like their wide receiver room is pretty crowded as it is. Now, certainly, Jerry Jeudy is probably better at the very least than a couple of guys in that room. With that said, Chico, is it fair or foul the Browns should make a play for Jerry Jeudy?
Okay, I always say, and I know it's the boring answer, I don't know what it's going to take to get him. I'll leave that to Andrew Berry. But let me get back to the point you made about he's already better than a couple guys. He absolutely is. Like, two traits that both those guys have, and I don't, you can say, well, it's an Alabama thing, whatever, but Amari Cooper is an impeccable route runner, and Jerry Jeudy is the same way. Jerry Jeudy has been banged up, but Jerry Jeudy, again, learned at Alabama, and there's no question if Jerry Jeudy joins the fold, he is number two. Like, it's not, I know going into the season we're like, well, is it going to be Elijah Moore behind Amari? Is it Donovan Peoples-Jones? And, well, what about the rookie Cedric Tillman? And they brought in Marquise Goodwin. Jerry Jeudy arrives if they were to do that. And, yeah, he is. And unlike other wide receivers, DeAndre Hopkins among others, Jerry Judy's not going to be an issue in terms of, I want targets, I want this, I want that. So, I mean, I'm definitely intrigued because the wide receiver position, while, you see a lot of good young talent around the league, it's not necessarily easy unless you're a superstar like a Justin Jefferson to just, vault onto the scene and, be great. Jerry Jeudy gives you another trusted veteran there. And again, this is key, a guy that is very sure-handed, a great route runner, and will not be an issue in terms of, well, I need more targets. So, yeah, I mean, depending on what they would have to give up, I'd absolutely be interested in Jerry Jeudy. He's kind of in that same mold as Amari Cooper.
Yeah,
not as good, but
it's definitely exciting. I have some injury concerns with Jeudy. It feels like he hasn't stayed healthy for a full season.
Oh, he
but
hasn't. Yeah,
it happens with a lot of receivers as well, and certainly he would probably not be as he wouldn't have as much of a responsibility in this receiver room compared to Denver, I feel like. But
well,
with that
you're
said,
saying he wouldn't be him and Cortland Sutton kind of, I guess, share the number one thing. But, yeah, he would still he would immediately be number one to Amari Cooper. I mean, along with Amari Cooper.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Now, I want to ask you, speaking of the Broncos, about an interesting conspiracy theory that has surfaced, courtesy of some disgruntled Broncos fans, essentially that the Broncos are tanking, right? Like, they brought in a defensive coordinator in Vance Joseph, who has had very little success as a D coordinator. And Sean Payton apparently wasn't all like he had said prior to joining the Broncos. He had praised Caleb Williams, spoken very highly of him. Obviously, wouldn't mind having him on his squad. Now, with that said, you bring in a guy who you expect to fail, a defensive coordinator. He suddenly becomes the bigger scapegoat than you because you handle your offense and the defense is just a crap show. And so he keeps his job. He gets Caleb Williams. Happy ending for Sean Payton. Fair or foul, you buy in this conspiracy that the Broncos are tanking?
Foul. Do I think that he, along with other teams, GMs, coaches, think Caleb Williams a good player? Yes. Sean Payton, think about what he said about Nathaniel Hackett and the pressure he immediately put on himself. But the idea, why would he hire? So you're telling me that conspiracy theory is he knowingly hired Vance Joseph because he thought he would fail? No. Like, that's stupid. No, that's dumb. No, they're not.
Chico, Caleb Williams, this wouldn't be the first time that tanking wasn't speculated. It's not, to me.
But why would a high profile coach come into Denver and his plan is to tank?
Maybe he knew Russ was cooked.
No, that's all BS. None of it's. I don't think he. I think he knows that Russ Wilson's best days are behind him. Do they know, and does he know that? Yeah, they need probably better at the position very, very soon. Sure, but that's a huge stretch. And to say that he hired Vance Joseph because he knew that he would be a terrible defensive coordinator is ridiculous. Now, granted, they just got handed a 70 burger and a 50-point burger loss. Sean Payton just, he basically needs to shut his mouth and coach his team, and they didn't do a good job of that on Sunday.
Yeah, Chico, I saw this meme that just had me dying. It was, remember that when they first acquired Russell Wilson and he recorded the corny promo, Bronco Country, let's ride. And it was just him, and there's like a huge kitchen fire in the background, and you hear the fire alarm going off, and he's there with the chef's hat on, and he's like, Broncos Country, let's ride.
Let Russ cook that thing. Yeah. And then he wasn't it last year that he wore his own jersey to camp?
Oh.
To training camp? Like,
that man is just a little awkward.
He's and I guess I never thought he was that way, but then he had an office. Who has an office at the facility? He doesn't this year, but like he had his own office at the facility.
He needs to channel his inner Hank Voight. My office, now. All right. I digress, Chico, from one quarterback who might be a little bit awkward to one who is certainly less awkward. It's time for some CJ Stroud propaganda, Chico. So, highest graded quarterbacks on 3rd and 4th down. 1, Patrick Mahomes. 2, CJ Stroud. Let me read you some specific stats. Stroud on 3rd and 4th down. He is first in the NFL in completions, yards, touchdowns, and adjusted completion percentage. Those are some pretty clutch numbers here early to start the season. Chico, would you say CJ Stroud is the most likely candidate for Rookie of the Year early in the season at this point?
Most likely, no. I think it's going to be Bijan Robinson. But I do think teams are figuring out with Atlanta that Desmond Ridder is no threat. So we're just going to but Bijan Robinson special. CJ Stroud, though, hey, I'll give you, and I'm rooting for him too. I don't want it to seem like he is a Buckeye. I just didn't. You kind of, it was borderline worship. I think it's great because, again, remember when people were, he doesn't do this well. He had great wide receivers and no Ohio State quarterback and blah, 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 blah. Well, if you look at the numbers, and I was listening to, I don't know if it was Orlovsky or one of those guys breaking down all 22, and they were actually pointing out like how he's anticipating. And that was something that a lot of them he doesn't anticipate. Those receivers are running, they're already so separated from the defender. He doesn't have to anticipate. That's exactly what he is doing to start his young career. Good for him. good for him. But as far as rookie of the year, boy, Bijan is kind of one of those generational type backs that can do it all. So, but good for CJ. I want to see him. I want to see him excel, just so you'll be happy.
Yeah, and to your point, Bijan has definitely been the more consistent rookie through 3 weeks. But I digress. All right, Chico, this question courtesy of our old pal Ronald. He wants to know, fair or foul, the Browns will be able to contain Lamar's run game this Sunday.
Okay, I need a definition of what contain. Like,
how about let's set over under 50 yards. Keep him within 50 yards rushing.
Yeah, I'm gonna say fair on that. But see, the thing with Lamar, and this is where you can say, like, I don't like the idea of containing him without watching the game. Like, let's say he breaks one, which he's very prone to do. I mean, he had 100 and whatever yards last week against Indianapolis. He has one big run against the Browns, but for the most part, he is, to use Nick Shook's term, caged. Then they did their job. So I don't necessarily want to put it at a number. I'll just say that the demoralizing plays, and everybody knows what I'm talking about, where he just plays break down, you've got pressure coming, and then he breaks free, moves the chains after 15 yards, and it's just frustrating. It's what Lamar Jackson does better than any other player in the NFL. I think the Browns are able to limit some of that and cage him for the most part, but he's still going to be Lamar Jackson on some plays.
Yeah, and after how we've seen the Bengals sort of stumble out of the gate with all the questions surrounding Burrow, I feel like it's safe to say that this is the Browns' toughest test so far for that defense. And it is going to be something that I am fascinated in watching for. Like, oh, he's such a frustrating player when you have to go up against him. And like you said, like, always bailing out the offense in adverse situations where you think it's over. It drives me up a freaking wall, Chico. I'm really hoping to see the defense put a stop to that come Sunday.
Yeah, I think with the secondary, I think they match up pretty well. Zay Flowers he's going to be a problem for many years. I mean, the guy's very good. But you look at that cornerback room. Hopefully, Greg Newsome returns. They played lights out. Then you talk about the guys up front. But again, this is where you've got to be. And Nick mentioned it on the bold bald breakdown for week 3. You got to keep him caged, and that doesn't necessarily. It's being disciplined. You're still getting upfield. You're still being very aggressive, but you still have to be very disciplined in your lanes in order to contain him. I think they will be able to do that.
All right, Chico. Well, as far as fair foul goes for today, that'll do it.
Okay, Bohm. I can always tell when you're like gearing up to say something, like you've been. What's the significance there?
Just an opportunity to break out a Scottish accent.
For no apparent reason.
I like accents. You know I love my accents.
Yeah,
Chico.
but I thought it was just like New York accents or like those.
I love all accents. You haven't heard me break in my British accent yet? Hello. Fancy a spot of tea?
Folks, I know this is going to come as a very, very depressing message and just take the air right out of your balloons. But that's going to do it for this edition of the Chico Borman Show. We end with Bohm giving you Scottish followed by British accents. But before that, I'd like to think that we did a pretty good job, and we had a lot of great Browns talk. The bald breakdown with Nick Shook and myself is each and every Tuesday beginning at noon. We also talked to Mary Kay Cabot from Cleveland.com and the Cleveland Plain Dealer. You can catch us and her and all of our guests on the iHeart app. You can do that live. Search Big Play under live radio and listen. Matt Fontana is before me. He's on 9 to 11. I go noon to 2. All Big Play shows stream replays throughout the day. But, hey, we've also got TV. Yesterday you saw, how about come get some Greg Williams with Top Dog Hanford Dixon? How good was that? You got that. You got the return with Josh and Maria Cribbs, Bobby Carpenter, Anthony Schlegel. They're all available, by the way, also in addition to theirs being available on Bally Sports Great Lakes and Bally Sports Ohio, live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. It's all there. Where you want it, how you want it, when you want it, not necessarily delivered in an accent that you want, that Bohm delivers. But, you know, as Bohm would say, we digress. The new way of enjoying entertainment. We're going to do it again tomorrow. A lot of baseball. Tito Francona's final home game. I'll be there. I'll be talking about it. We'll also be talking about it because it just so happens to be Wednesday with our good buddy Brett Boone. So for Mary Kay Cabot, also for Nick Shook, and for Mr. Bohm Bastic, I'm like Chico Borman, the Chico Borman Show. All of us here at Big Play Sports. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, everybody. See you.